Hybus News. I'm Suresh Kochadar. The International Monetary Fund on Tuesday predicted a deep global recession this year, and the world growth would be minus 4.4%, asserting that the global economic crisis is far from over, mainly due to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. In its latest World Economic Outlook report, the International Monetary Fund also said that the swift recovery in China has surprised the upside, while the global economy's long ascent back to the pre-pandemic levels of activity remains prone to setbacks. The crisis, however, far from over. In its latest World Economic Outlook, the IMF continues to project a deep recession in 2020. Global growth is projected to be upwards of minus 4.4%, an upward revision of 0.8 percentage points compared to the June update, says Geeta Gopinath, Chief Economist of the International Monetary Fund. The upgrade owes to somewhat less dire outcomes in the second quarter, as well as signs of a stronger recovery in the third quarter, offset partly by downgrades in some emerging and developing economies. According to the report, in 2021, growth is projected to rebound to 5.2%, minus 0.2 percentage points below its June projection. Noting that the COVID-19 pandemic continues to spread with over 1 million lives tragically lost so far, the Indian-American economist said living with the novel coronavirus has been a challenge like no other. However, she said that the world is adapting as a result of the erased lockdown and rapid deployment of the policy support on an unprecedented scale by central banks and governments around the world. The global economy is coming back from the depths of its collapse in the first half of the year, she said. Employment has partially rebounded after having been pummeled during the peak of the crisis. The crisis is, however, far from over. Employment remains well below the pre-pandemic levels, and the labor market has become more polarized, with low-income workers, youth and women being the harder hit, she added. She further said that the poor are getting poorer, with close to 90 million people expected to fall into the extreme deprivation this year. The ascent out of this calamity is likely to be long, uneven and highly uncertain. It is essential that fiscal and monetary policy support are not prematurely withdrawn as best as possible, Geeta Gopinath said. She also said that except for China, where output is expected to exceed 2019 levels this year, output in both advanced economies and emerging market and developing economies is expected to be projected to remain below the 2019 levels even next year. Countries that rely more on contact-intensive services and oil exporters face weaker recoveries compared to manufacturing-led economies. The divergence in income prospects between advanced economies and emerging and developing economies, excluding China, triggered by this pandemic, is projected to worsen, she said. The IMF has upgraded its forecast for advanced economies for 2020 to minus 5.8%, followed by a rebound growth to 3.9% in 2021. Geeta Gopinath also said that in emerging market and developing countries, excluding China, IMF has downgraded with the growth projected to be at minus 5.7% in 2020 and then a recovery to 5% in 2021. With this, the cumulative growth in per capita income for the emerging market and developing economies, excluding China, over 2021 is projected to be lower than the advanced economy, she said. Geeta Gopinath also said that the considerable global fiscal support for close to US $12 trillion and the extensive rate cuts, liquidity injections, asset purchases by central banks have helped save lives and livelihoods and prevented a financial catastrophe. There is still much that needs to be done to ensure a sustained recovery, she said. First, greater international collaboration is needed to end this health crisis. Second, to the extent possible, policies must be aggressively focusing on limiting persistent economic damage from this crisis. Geeta Gopinath also said that over time, as the recovery strengthens, policy should shift to facilitating and the reallocation of workers from sectors that are likely to shrink on a long-term basis like travel to a growing sectors like e-commerce. Emerging market and developing economies are having to manage the crisis with fewer resources as many are constrained by the elevated debt and higher borrowing cost, she said. Lastly, Geeta Gopinath said that the policy should be designed with an eye towards placing economies on a path of stronger, equitable and sustainable growth. The global easing of monetary policy, while essential for the recovery, should be complemented with measures to prevent the buildup of financial risk over the medium term, and the central bank independence should be safeguarded at all costs, she said.